Welcome to our video on Max Weber. Today we'll understand Max Weber, the administrative theorist. Max Weber, as we know him, is very popular for bringing about his theory on bureaucracy, but he never gave any theory on bureaucracy. He talks about two very important things: rationality and how power becomes authority. He also talks about domination, power, legitimacy, and authority. We'll understand this. We'll demystify this whole thing. Max Weber was served in the German army. He managed the military hospitals, about 8 to 10 military hospitals during the World War One, and from there he understood bureaucracy. In the first hand, he experienced bureaucracy. Max Weber says or asks a question to himself: why do people comply to orders? What is the source of this power? What is the source of this authority? So let's understand this concept of power, authority, and what is the difference between them. Power, as we all know it, power is the ability to get something done irrespective of resistance. Power does not care about consent, power does not care about resistance. It is the ability to get things done. Power, when it gets legitimacy, it becomes authority. How does power get legitimacy? And let's understand this by an example. There are certain terrorist groups that also have hold power in certain regions in the world, but there are also armies that hold power. What is the difference between them? The terrorist groups hold power without legitimacy, while the army or the police force hold power with legitimacy. That is why police has an authority while a terrorist group just has power. So power, or let's say authority, is legitimacy plus power. It's the legitimate exercise of power. Weber says when this legitimate exercise of power happens in society, that is how compliance take place. For example, if we get an order from somewhere, if that order is legitimate in nature, our compliance will be automatic. There will be better compliance to that order. If the order is illegitimate, then we might not comply. But the question is, from where does this legitimacy come from? Weber answers three things, three sources from where legitimacy comes from. The first source is tradition, second source is charisma, and third source are laws or legal rational sources. So, tradition gives legitimacy, a charismatic personality gives legitimacy, or there is a legal, rational means of legitimacy. Let's understand this. What is, how does tradition grant legitimacy? Tradition is something that is going on from a very long time. For example, if there is a ruler, there is a monarch has authority over his population to rule because his father was a monarch, because he comes from a lineage of royalty. That is tradition. Secondly, how does charisma, a charismatic personality become a source of legitimacy? You must have seen certain charismatic people, you must have read about them. You must have read about Nelson Mandela, you must have read about Mahatma Gandhi. These are very charismatic figures. So, whatever they used to say, that power used to have certain legitimacy and that became authority. For example, all the ideas that Nelson Mandela had got crystallized into a legitimate source of power, that is authority, in the anti apartheid regime of South Africa. Similarly, we see the modern Indian government after independence had a lot of Gandhian ideas in it. So these charismatic figures became authorities. So that this is how charisma transfers into authority. They provide, it's a source of legitimacy. And last is legal rational source of legitimacy. Legal rational source means any kind of laws we have that is made through logic. The Constitution of India is made with logic, it's made with reasoning. There is every reason for every clause in every article that exists. It is through exercise of reason that the Constituent Assembly has created this. So that is from where legal rational authority comes from. So this is how power gets translated into authority. These are three sources of legitimacy. First is tradition, second is charisma, and third is legal rational. I believe you understand right now. Moving on, Weber says this authority gets translated gets translated into administrative systems because just authority cannot make governance happen. This authority translates into governance systems. Let's say what kind of governance system that Weber talks about. Weber talks about three kinds of governance systems or administrative systems. Beg your pardon. So first kind of administrative system is traditional administrative system. For example, you must have seen during the Mughal emperor had his administrative system that was traditional in nature. The Mughal Empire or the Mughal emperor drew his authority from the lineage he came from. There was a patrimonial administrative system with the Mughal emperor. Let's say, for example, in Delhi, it was a highly centralized authority that the Mughal Empire had. Anything that the Mughal emperor said was law. The compliance was very high because the Mughal Empire had its seat in Delhi or in Agra, according to those times. However, imagine during the Mughal Emperor's time, there is a place far away from Delhi, for example, Deccan. In Deccan, the amount of authority that they exercise in Delhi, the amount of authority reduces when the distance increase. In Deccan, there would be a more feudalistic setup where the governor appointed by the Mughals would exercise much more power than the emperor himself. That is why we see a feudal administration, and this both come under traditional administrative system. First was patrimonial. Patrimonial was what we saw in Delhi or Agra at that time. Second is feudal administration that we see in far off places than the national capital. Then moving on to charismatic administrative system. In charismatic administrative system, we find that the administrative system is very fickle in nature, is very weak in nature, that it breaks apart or falls apart after that charismatic leader goes away. When Nelson Mandela goes away or when Mahatma Gandhi goes away, the amount of authority attached to their words reduce because that person no longer exists. Any kind of successor they choose tends to be very weak and often not accepted by the larger populace. This makes charismatic administrative system very fickle in nature. Even though that, so even if charismatic administrative system becomes crystallized and becomes permanent in nature, that translates more like a patrimonial administrative system, because the major leader leaves behind a lineage, and that lineage continues this patrimonialism. Moving on, the last kind of administrative system that Weber was most interested in, the administrative system, he said, this legal rational administrative system that will rule the roost in the modern world. On the back of it will run the modern capitalism, and that he termed as bureaucracy. Bureaucracy before Weber was understood something as in a very negative light. Bureaucracy, Weber says, that bureaucracy is not a negative, it's not a negative word. He says it's a rational administrative system that will make the modern world function. It is the administrative system of the modern world. It will it will make democracy prosperous. It will make democracy possible. What is bureaucracy then, according to Weber? Bureaucracy is basically this legal rational structure. Bureaucracy, he talks about, it's a legal rational administrative system. It is manned by professionals and skilled officials. It is usually a social organization. It is a body of appointed officials, and it can be found anywhere in government, private, judiciary, any place. And it can have both economic and political orientation. So, what are these features of bureaucracy that Weber is talking about? So, Weber goes ahead and creates an ideal type methodology to find out his views on bureaucracy. His views on bureaucracy is based on a methodology called ideal type methodology. So, first we see hierarchy. Hierarchy, as we know, let's say in a secretariat, from section officer to the secretary level, there is hierarchy, and that hierarchy is a quintessential feature of bureaucracy. Moving on, there is a sphere of competence. If there is a region, there is a district in which uh, a bureaucrat is appointed, for example, an SP of a district, that is the sphere of his competence. Within that jurisdiction, that SP is responsible and has authority to carry out those responsibilities. Similarly, meritocracy is a feature. There are total 8 features. This is the third feature, meritocracy. So, in modern bureaucracy, if you want to go in, you have to pass an exam. As as we see in India, the civil services exam is for that. Moving on, we see career system. Career system, bureaucrats are career bureaucrats. They are here for the long run. They are here in service for 30, 35 years. They experience all kinds of organizations and administration of all kinds of organization. And through that, they develop an expertise to administer. So therefore, it's a career system. We also see impersonal detachment as a feature. What is impersonal detachment? So any work that the bureaucrats do or an administrator does in a particular organization, he does not own the means of production. He's just a trustee of the public. He's a trustee of the public. He holds the office as a trustee for the public. He holds the public money as he's a trustee. So, impersonal detachment. It's not his personal property, it's not his personal office, it's a public office that he is holding. And he has to take impersonal decisions. He cannot bring in his own biases in making decisions. He cannot give any favors according to his own whims and fancies. Moving on, the sixth point, written records. Written records, because everything in bureaucracy is according to what is written. Any decision is written. There are no oral orders. Everything that happens in bureaucracy is through written orders. Everything is based on the paperwork. That is why uh, one of the criticisms of bureaucracy is there is a lot of red tapeism because of this. Moving on, specialization. Specialization is another feature of bureaucracy, structural feature that Weber talks about. He says specialization means somebody or the bureaucrats who have worked in a certain organization for a very long time, they develop specializations in that particular area. For example, if somebody has worked in marine sector for a long time, so any kind of marine any policy related to marine infrastructure, marine biodiversity, so that person must be involved. And secondly, specialization is also a feature in terms of that person before going to uh, before joining the service has to be trained in a particular way. So specialized training. Then comes non-bureaucratic head. Now this is a very important thing that Weber talks about, a non-bureaucratic head. Weber was very much concerned about the power instrument that bureaucracy was. He said that we are giving a body so much power that it can suddenly forget about the public good and use that power to protect themselves, protect their own interest. So, how to keep a check on that? Weber created a system, a system that we very well know ourselves, a system that is applied in our own country. That system is like this: politics controls the administration serves the people, and people elect politicians. This diagram explains representative democracy as we know it. Representative democracy. Politics controls administration. Politicians are the non-bureaucratic head of administrative bodies. Administration serves the people, and people elect politicians. So this is a circle that controls governance in a country. Weber says representative democracy will take care that administration takes care of public interest and does not act against the public. So that is why, because there are public representatives who are controlling the administration. So this is Weber's idea. Weber also says that bureaucracy is also an iron cage. An iron cage because once bureaucracy comes, bureaucracy does not go away. And within it, there are officials who suffer because bureaucracy is not a very does not have a lot of human element in it. You have to be impersonal in your approach. That is why whatever your personal feelings are, whatever your personal faith are, had to be kept aside. That is why there is a problem of alienation within the bureaucracy. So these were broad ideas that Max of Weber talks about the bureaucracy. In the next video, we'll continue our discussion on Max Weber. Thank you for watching.